Let me hit you with this fact, which I think we all sort of knew, but which we still need to get our heads around. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have been in office now for precisely 1 month. And like the old saying about years where nothing happens and days where decades happen, this past month has been a lot. Now, whether you watch Trump out of interest or cover him professionally, the contrast to the entirely slow-moving, plodding, managed decline of the Biden administration is, well, I mean, it's nothing short of shocking. But these days, the pace can seem almost wearying, though not so much that we're tired of winning. No. But still, think about it. In the first month of his presidency, Trump has said many times the sheer number of words, many if not most of them unscripted and off the cuff, that old Joseph Robinette Biden captured here just recently in a video showing him making a visit to a local bakery. And I bet you there that the local baguettes there had more mental firepower than Biden at this point. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. This administration is a double act, and while Trump is making pronouncements on the fly, the intellectual heft behind this administration has to be seen as J.D. Vance. Now, we saw last week how Vance delivered that incredible, unbelievable speech to European leaders, essentially telling them, among other things, that you can't go around talking about how you're the last defense of democracy on the one hand, while arresting people and having the police raid them for mean tweets on the other. And just a few hours ago, Vance was at CPAC, which is the big annual conservative gathering, and you know what? He gave another speech, and he did not disappoint. In fact, he covered the field. One of the things Vance does quite well, I think, is to show the fundamental links between what would seem like disparate policy issues, like, for example, open borders on the one hand and free speech on the other. Vance gets that the more you open your borders to illegal or simply culturally incompatible migrants and everything that comes with that, well, the more governments have to do when they do these things to shut everyone up so that they can stay in power.
We cannot rebuild Western civilization. We cannot rebuild the United States of America or Europe by letting millions and millions of unvetted illegal migrants come into our country. It has to stop. Thank God it stopped here, but it's got to stop there. And a related issue, Mercedes, is you can't just stop it. You have to allow European peoples, and of course the American people too, to raise issues about it.
Right.
You have to allow free speech to debate this stuff. You have to stop doing things to the populations of the world. You've got to give the populations of the world the opportunity to speak up and say, no more of this BS.
Vance also talked about the way young men in particular have been demonized and repressed by a left-wing culture that commands the heights of education and human resources and thinks that being a dude is icky.
My message to young men is, I think that our culture sends a message to young men that you should suppress every masculine urge. You should try to cast aside your family. You should try to suppress what makes you a young man in the first place. And I think that my message to young men is don't allow this broken culture to send you a message that you're a bad person because you're a man, because you like to tell a joke, because you like to have a beer with your friends, or because you're competitive.
He's spot on, and I'd add that that sort of repression is exactly how you wind up with a society of Andrew Tates and incels. But he also had this hope for all young people and their future.
My message to young people generally is we're trying to make your life better. And that is the simple thrust of President Trump's policy is we want you to be able to buy a home. We want you to be able to work a good job. We want you to be able to raise your kids, like I said, according to the values that you believe in. And we want you to be able to build a nice life in this country that all of us love.
Summing up, Vance said that it was all about, well, I'll let him tell you.
fundamental goal of our immigration policy, of our border policy, of DOGE saving taxpayer money, the fundamental goal is we want your children and grandchildren to be able to raise a family in security and comfort in the country that we all love. That is the whole goal of President Trump's agenda.
Listen to that. I mean, it is so interesting when you compare Trump and Vance, who the press for years told us were knuckle-dragging dopes and hayseeds, to the last vice president, Kamala Harris, who, let us not forget, could have become America's new president. Have a look at her here, giving a few off-the-cuff remarks on Broadway earlier this week.
For those rights to be maintained, which means we have to be vigilant, and it's just the nature of it. These things all coexist. Yeah. But I believe we fight for something, not against something. Yes. Right. And that's our optimism, right?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Wow, how deep. All I can say is, thank God Trump turned his head.